Record now. So we're recording now, Mike. So Mike, before I press record down here, I just want to say thank you so much. And hello to the viewer on YouTube.
Thanks for having me. And also hello to you and everyone watching.
Yeah, exactly. Good. All right. So you good to go? You got yourself sorted? All right. Let me just get to the page where I have my notes for the opening here. I could probably recite it in my sleep, but it is the time when, yeah. One sip. Mike, what are you drinking? Just for reference. I'm drinking coffee. You're what?
I mean, it kind of looks like coffee, but you can't see. It's dark in there. It's a little medicine concoction. Not really. It's some greens powder and some peppermint and ginger tea.
Right.
Medicine meaning it's leaning more towards it doesn't taste very good versus it tastes good.
Right. Or medicine, as in, it's an alcoholic beverage at
there's a little bit of vodka in there.
What is 10:15
there is
in
not.
the morning?
There is not.
For you. Right. All right. I'm pressing record now. But so viewer on YouTube, like Mike and I go a long way back now. I freely give him shit, and I'm happy with that. All right, I have pressed record now. Okay. Hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. Today, we're going to have a great chat with my friend, coach, and mentor, Mike Campbell, about why we men can find it so hard to ask for help. Say hi, Mike.
Hey, everyone.
Before we get going, this podcast is all about destigmatizing loneliness and promoting authentic connection for gay men globally. It contains content relating to the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anyone in earshot, now's the time for you to move on. So with all of that said, how about you and Mike go get us a table and I'll go get the coffee sorted. And this is where I edit the bits out. All right. Here we go. If this is the first time you've connected with me over coffee, welcome. I recognize and want to honor and say how proud I am of you that you may have just taken a big step to engaging with the thoughts and feelings that you might actually be a gay man who's lonely. This is a huge step. And as I said, I want to recognize your courage and I'm really proud of you. You've actually picked a really great episode to press play on because I know that Mike is going to just freely dispense so much wisdom about how we men, gay, straight, whatever, can find it so hard to ask for help, even when we know that it's what we need to do. And before I throw to Mike, I wanted to say to you, listener, that this conversation is actually quite personal and it comes after a blog post that I published back in May 2020 on why I find it so hard to ask for help. And these are, asking for help from friends. Why do I feel so just generally weird and shit within myself asking people who I know love me to and asking them for help? What the hell is that all about? So, Mike, before we get to what the hell is that all about, welcome. And who are you?
Thank you for having me. Very happy to have a coffee. Kind of looks like a coffee. Who am I? Well, yeah, I'm Mike. My name is Mike Campbell. And who am I? That question. Where do I go with that question? Many places. Well, I mean, I'm a new father. That's something that's very present for me at the moment. And with that husband. And what I do with a large chunk of my life, I suppose, is that I'm a men's coach. And I work with everyday men in kind of getting their shit together in the simplest of senses. And really what I like to say is that I'm kind of like the honest mate that every guy needs in his corner. And I help everyday men build legendary relationships with themselves, with their partners, and in their world. And so that's kind of where I apply a lot of my energy. But then what the energy really is, and I suppose perhaps what more accurately speaks to me, is I'm a dude who's super curious about the world around me and myself and about other humans. And I like to dig in and explore that and follow perhaps where my curiosity takes me. And so that, look, in a more normal time, that might take me to different places in the world, but certainly at the moment it is not. And so, I guess the biggest avenue we have for curiosity is the human mind and human behavior. So that's kind of where, if it's in my work or if it's watching my 10-week-old daughter, it's curiosity as to the world around me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because for me, that curiosity, that sense of curiosity, is also so powerful. And we often, I guess, associate curiosity with, the expression "curiosity killed the cat."
Mm-hmm.
It may also, but the cat also finds out shit about itself. The cat also finds out more about the world. The cat also, lives beyond the confines of a single room.
Yeah.
And it's, I feel it's that word curiosity, Mike, that I do want to say, for some of the listeners and on YouTube, some of the viewers might actually be just going like, what is this all about? And the recognizing, as I said at the very beginning, that the thoughts and feelings of loneliness as uncomfortable and frankly as shit as they can make us feel, they are an invitation. They're not very pleasant. They're not invitations that we often want to accept. But that sense of curiosity about why they are there are the very reason why we have those feelings. It's an invitation to get curious and to get the connection that we need in life. So brilliant word there, Mike, in terms of like what drives you to find shit out.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's curious on some level, but maybe we don't execute on it in ways that serve us that effectively, perhaps. But most of our life is some level of curiosity. Even if I'm pulling my phone out in a moment of loneliness, there's some curiosity there, and I'm just, perhaps I haven't, as you said, with loneliness, connected to the fact that this is an invitation to find out something else. I'm taking it in a different direction.
Yeah. So, and again, it's one of those, the reaching into the pocket for the phone, whatever it is, clicking, in a moment of being alone. I don't want to say loneliness there, but being alone and having the opportunity, going onto something like Pornhub or something like that, and numbing the or seeking to connect with parts of ourselves that through a tool that we have, that's very convenient, that's a portal to the world. So yeah, well, we kind of just got onto another topic there altogether, didn't we? But listener, this is the way of our conversations, where in many instances we solve the problems of the world, but then find other ones to create and solve. But Mike, the question of the day, and I hope that you've got an answer beyond a sentence. Otherwise, this is going to be a really short coffee / medicinal green beverage. Why do we men find it so hard to ask for help?
Well, I think, look, we can segue from the previous point because, this invites some curiosity, of course, right? If we go through our lives and just don't do it, or don't even recognize or acknowledge that it's difficult, uncomfortable, awkward, it's terrifying to ask for help, then, you know, that curiosity is essential for us to even start exploring that. So why do we struggle so much? Well, I don't think it will be a sentence, because I think there's a big rabbit hole of exploration. I think the simplest thing, and, you know, clearly you've explored this topic a lot, you've published a blog on it recently, and, you know, there's the simple thing, and I remember you saying, you know, I don't want to just blame society for all my woes, because we complete victim if we do that. We need personal responsibility, but, you know, we have to look at, if we draw back from that even further, why does anyone do anything? And then we can start to actually look at what has shaped you as a person. And broadly speaking, there's lots of things. One of those broad things is our family environment, the society that we grew up in, and the rules and conditions and messages we receive. There's lots of things that make up who we are. So I think where society comes in this instance, is some fairly simple and, I suppose, recognizable things in the form of different messages and you know, those kind of unspoken rules and things that we hear. And a simple one for men and young men and boys is to harden up, to toughen up, to sort it out, to don't cry, to don't be a pussy, to don't be weak, essentially. Yeah. And all of these things kind of start to equate to, you have to be tough and strong and sort everything out yourself. And so, of course, the idea of not knowing something, and then, well, how can I know this? Asking for help. But then what does asking for help say about me? It essentially says I'm not all those things that I've learned that I need to be, which is kind of the strong, misguided stoic, I think, dude who is independent and fully capable and can do and know everything, which of course is outrageous. So I think there's this very, very large societal aspect at play that we then take on board. They become our messages to ourselves. And so, you know, the idea of asking for help can easily just be accompanied with any number of little stories and beliefs. One of those things being, but what does that say about me? Does that mean that I'm weak? Does that mean that I'm useless? Does that mean that I don't know? Does that mean that I'm not good enough? Now, where the curiosity piece comes in is I don't think we're asking those questions. It's just become the default kind of baseline thought process running beneath the surface. I can't ask for help.
Yeah.
So I think that's a societal aspect, let's call it, which of course can be stronger in some areas, can be stronger in some families. You know, if you had a father, or if your modeling of men was, you know, a man who had zero access to his emotions, but perhaps it would be more accurate if I said, if a father or a man who chose to have zero access to his emotions and, you know, couldn't even ask for directions, right? That's one of those old cliches, right? Like, can't even ask for directions. I always said, and I think, what? Just ask the person in the store or ask the direction. Why am I going to spend 15 to 10 minutes? Right? Because I'm happy not knowing. So, but if that was your modeling, potentially it's even stronger. I can't ask for help in any situation. And so the simple link becomes, because then that means something about me.
Yeah.
And so for the individual, it might be, you know, exploring what have I made that mean? But it's probably going to be something like, you know, I'm weak, I'm not good enough, it means I don't know, I'm a failure. You fill in the blank for yourself. But I would also say that filling in the blank might invite curiosity to, is there something then beneath that? You know, it means I don't know, of course, right? If I need help with something because I don't know it, it's simple. I don't need to give it emotion, but we tend to. So then the next thing is, well, what am I making it mean about myself if I don't know something, or if I have to ask for help? So let's perhaps touch on that one and see where we want to go with it. But I think that societal aspect is huge. Yeah. Now, of course, if we, you know, maybe throw the baby out the bathwater and go, we can't just blame society, then we miss a lot of things that have generated the belief systems that we carry for ourselves.
Yeah, I feel, you know, it is a mixture of both, you know, society and personal responsibility. And on society, before I go into personal sort of responsibility, and that personal curiosity rather than responsibility, I is perhaps better. one thing that I do want to explore there is that, you know, in asking for help, in not being like the fully self-sufficient man, in being an island,
Yeah,
being,
an island.
you know, having all our shit sorted, a lid on everything, knowing how to handle every situation, exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it, to who to, and to whom to say it. You know, when you say it out loud, grammatically correctly or not, it's blatantly ridiculous. It is
Oh,
so.
you weren't born with all the knowledge of the world?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you know, we're smart, we're capable, you know, we you know are wonderfully human beings. But the opposite of all of that, of, you know, being weak, being not able to handle everything in yourself, is far too often for men labeled gay. And, you know,
yeah, well, the weakness,
yeah,
yeah, gay,
yeah,
that kind of like symbiotic
yeah.
definition almost.
And you know this, Mike. I know this, I know this, and the listener certainly knows this as well, that it takes so much strength, so much courage to show up day in, day out as who we are, authentically who we are, you know, regardless of sexuality, but to show up as we are in the world that wants us to be a certain way, a certain, dare I say, like certain type of man, which is completely unattainable and you know, quite frankly, dangerous. But the opposite of all of that is so often labelled to be gay. And particularly around like the in those teenage years that we've all been through, and that keeps so many boys quiet.
Yeah,
And
well, like, you know, if you go to the simple, to be a man is, and then it's just whatever comes under that, and you know, that's kind of what we're talking about, that self-sufficient, like omnipotently competent almost.
yeah,
And so if you're not, then you're
I like
weak,
those
or
words.
again, don't be a pussy, don't be a girl, don't be gay. It's essentially saying shut away any feminine aspect
Yeah,
and be hyper masculine, which of course is regardless of the person, anything that we don't exercise atrophies, it dies. And so if we deny that side of us, it does die. And so not only do we reject it, but then we lose access to it. In a sense, we don't know how to access all of that side, and so it becomes very easy just to label the other, right? That's gay, that's weak, that's whatever.
yeah,
What a
yeah. And
mess.
then, yeah, I know. And then, you know, that then becomes like the forbidden side of ourselves, the dark side, it's an unwilling Star Wars reference there, but yeah, you know, it's the thing to deny, it's the thing to ignore, it's the thing to wish away, it's the thing to, oh my God, that's come up again. You know, so racked with shame that it's come up again. I think that right there is worth the, you know, this extra sort of reinforcing of the point. That right there for men, gay, straight, however, you know, we are on the sexuality spectrum, that as men in today's world, in many societies where people are listening, where to be a man is to be that fully self-sufficient island. And I don't know if it's me, but, you know, I kind of have the image of the Marlboro Man in my mind, of like, you know, just fully capable of doing, there's nothing that takes the Marlboro Man by surprise, except for perhaps lung cancer. But yeah, it really is, you know, this image, and I know we've had this conversation numerous times, Mike, about like the misappropriation of stoic. and the maladaptation of Stoicism to mean being that fully self-sufficient island who shows no emotions.
And I mean, there's so many
knows some
consequences.
emotions.
Yeah, and there's so many consequences of that. But a very simple thing being, look, if you don't, because this is of course anyone, but the more we model that, the more we shut off our ability to love and be loved.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. Now, of course, this is not everyone. Not everyone forms that, hyper masculine, I need to shut off myself mode. Some people go to and some men go very much to the other end of the spectrum, and they reject and kind of fight back against that. But if we're going to the other end of the spectrum, we're always going to be missing that balance point in the middle. That's not meaning someone can ask for help, but it means, they might be in that place, but they might have rejected all of these kind of societal norms and conditions and so on. But the rejection of something still leaves us in a place where we're potentially rejecting who we are in the middle there somewhere.
Yep. Yeah. What I want to ask is, so we get to a point, and it might be that, we start reading blogs, we start reading, I don't know, like we in the lifestyle pages of newspapers perhaps, and we start to see like, oh God, what's the word? Like, it's cognitive affirmation or whatever, but like the word to describe, you're looking to buy a red
confirmation
car.
bias.
There you go. Thank you. It's you see a red car, you want to buy a red car, so you see red cars everywhere, and so
Yes.
you start to sort of begin to sit with the thoughts and feelings that you may have been ignoring for a very long time. Call that loneliness, call that, your sexuality, call that, I don't know, like changing jobs or
any struggle that you're having that you feel like you're the only one having it and no one else, everyone else has got their shit together, and bloody hell, I need to keep it together and not. Yeah.
And so you start to you start to take those first steps, those first curious steps into those changes. And so, you start to gather information, and this is me speaking personally. You gather as much information and you start reading. And incidentally, Mike, this is how I came across you and your work. And, you start reading, and then you go, like that really landed, that resonates. And then, you might start listening to the podcasts or watching things on YouTube, and you start to go, oh yeah, that's really, that's inspiring. That's great. They're onto something here. They get it. And then you stay there. You stay there and you just sort of are continuing in this sort of information. Like you're vacuuming up all this vast, level. You're reading all the books, you're watching all the watching, you know what I mean.
Yeah, so, you're consuming all the stuff.
Yeah.
You're gathering information.
Yeah, right. And then you're doing it gets to the point where you're doing almost everything but the doing that needs doing. Why is that step to move beyond like the vacuuming of the information, becoming an expert on whatever, and why is it so hard to, what stops us taking that step? And and specifically, I'm asking you, not just from a societal perspective, but like you in your work as a men's coach, what do you see?
Well, I think the simplest way to boil it down is we're avoiding a feeling that we don't want to experience. And so that feeling could be any number of things. We might have experienced it in the past. And so what we will tend to do, and this is anyone, but men are great for this because it's more of a trait of the masculine, is that we can get into our heads and we overthink, we overanalyze, and of course, gathering all that information and consuming is adding to that, right? Because it's also comfortable. It's easy to do that. It's easy to read books and listen to podcasts and that, but the doing of it, that requires me to move to my edge. And what it's essentially saying is there's something over there that I don't know. It's in the unknown. That feels vulnerable, perhaps anxiety inducing. And so I don't I don't think I can handle that. I don't know what comes on the other side of it. And so we tend to get into our head again and build it up and build it up and build it up. And of course, doing that is just masturbation of avoiding the feeling that is uncomfortable. And so there's this, our edge, I suppose, or more accurately, our perceived edge is the thing that is creating some kind of an uncomfortable feeling that we just go, I don't want to feel that. And that's where all the justifications come up, and the stories about maybe that means I'm weak, etc., etc. So I think it's always about a feeling. Anything that we do really is about either avoiding a feeling or creating a feeling. And so perhaps to maybe expand on that a little bit, if I'm okay, so let's say I'm experiencing something in my life that's unpleasant, and I'm realizing I need to do something about it and get some, maybe not some help yet, just some information. I'm experiencing some kind of feeling that I know I want to change. I want to create a different kind of feeling, or either want to avoid that one or feel it. It could be, loneliness. I feel bloody lonely. I'm going to start reading, the Loneliness Guy, and this is good information. God, this makes sense. All that stuff you said. So I'm trying to avoid that feeling. The other side of that is I want to feel connection, and I want to feel love and companionship. And so any action that I do is about avoiding or creating. So when it comes to the simple thing of how do I take a step towards asking for help, first of all, if I have a tendency to get up in my head about it, then I probably need to tap back into my body and going, what am I feeling right now? And what is the feeling that I'm actually trying to avoid with all this thinking?
Yeah, good point.
Does that help to start with?
Yeah, yeah, because also like the vacuuming up, the consuming information, that's great. That is doing. That is an initial first step. But as a secondary, as a tertiary step, that's not doing as it is, and that's no. It feels like doing, but it's not. It is that masturbation.
Yeah, if you've been doing nothing beforehand, then it is a big step.
Yeah.
And so I think then what happens is we come into, what we were talking about before is, so then what else am I making that next step mean? And so again, if it is, okay, well, I'm reading this stuff and cool. Nothing's happening in my life just because I'm reading it. So there's some application of it. There's something else now that I don't know, which is everyone all the time. We all, regardless of what we're doing and where it is in life, we all have ceilings. So if you're going to hit a ceiling and you want to play above the ceiling, then you're probably going to need some new tools, perhaps some assistance, some guidance, some new eyes. That might look like asking for help. So that now comes in. So if I'm going to ask, what am I making that mean about myself? Does that mean that I'm incompetent, that I'm stupid? Does it mean that I'm weak? Does it mean that I'm, all of that shit that I heard as a kid, you're gay. Does that mean that that's true? Like, that's the thing for me to explore. Now, coming back to the first point, if those things were to be true, I would feel something. And so actually I'm trying to avoid that feeling. How would it feel if in my head I believed I was weak, or if other people saw me as that? So again, it's still about that feeling.
Yeah. It is the thing that I really want to sort of reinforce, underline, bold, italicize, whatever it's going to be. It is that, getting out of our heads. And I think we includes me most definitely here, listener. And if you're not watching on YouTube, you will see me pointing very harshly towards myself. And Mike's got his hand up too. Like, I can get so in my head, and I have to take a very conscious decision, ironically, still in my head, a conscious decision to like go, no, I need to slow down or stop and feel what I'm feeling, not just think what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because fundamentally we're trying to outthink the emotion, and when if you exchange emotion for feeling, you can't outthink a feeling because they're different things. But that's the zone of comfort. And so again, what hopefully that we're getting to with a lot of this stuff around the simple act we say simple, of asking for help is I'm actually potentially placing a lot of how I identify on the line here.
Yeah.
Because if I have to ask Phil for help, what does that mean about me? Who am I then?
Yeah.
Now, there's so many different contexts, if it's around, I feel lonely, if it's around my physical health is a disaster zone. I need to fucking do something about it. Well, I mean, a simple tactic would be go and ask the help of a trainer or an expert. Why can't I do that? Why do I need to get in shape before I go see a trainer? Look at all these things. What does that then mean about me? Which is actually to say, what am I making that mean? So it still is, it's coming back to a lot of the time at our foundation. Who am I? Who do I believe I am? And who am I terrified of other people seeing me as?
And then that's when we start getting like to unpeeling that onion of, because you just said the magic words there, Mike, what will people think? Which we know that where that comes from. That comes from, listener, that comes from a place of shame. That the fear of judgment, the fear of being perceived, that's come like those are, as I just said, those magic words that say that, and it goes to like to the core of our worthiness, which, not wanting to spoil, an upcoming conversation, is actually the stigma of loneliness. The stigma of loneliness, the stigma that is all around asking for help, admitting out loud to ourselves and to those closest to us that we need better connection. We are lonely in our lives. The reason that we find it so hard to take that next step is because it goes straight to the core of our worthiness. By saying that we are lonely, we have put our hands up and go, I don't believe that I'm worthy of authentic connection in my life.
I'm terrified people will leave me, will reject me, and that will mean that I'm not good enough. These things are often just linked straight back in there. And so, the simple act of asking for help, again, regardless of what it is, but if it is that, oh my goodness, I think I'm lonely. Yeah. What do I do about this? Well, I think, regardless if you've been in that place or not, it's fairly easy to understand that if you're in that place, the idea of asking for someone for help on that is terrifying. Yeah. And why is it terrifying? Because of all the stuff we've built up about it.
Yeah.
And of course, not asking, on one hand, let's just be clear, is only going to continue down that path.
Yeah. Yeah. It just gives another example to start in the future of how, you could have asked for help, but you didn't. You chose to go it alone, become, to perpetuate the story of being a fully self-contained island of a human.
If I can get my shit together by myself,
quietly,
where no one else can judge me or reject me, then I can go and work on finding a relationship, finding connection, and so on.
Yeah.
Which of course can't happen. Now, actually, that makes me think of, if I'm going to take a little tangent here, so bear with me. It makes me think of another, I think,
gives me time for a sip of coffee.
Yes, very instrumental part of why we struggle to ask for help. Because when we come to this kind of, broadly speaking, lots of things, societal aspects of men need to be tough and self-sufficient and independent, I think there's actually perhaps I'll call it a biological aspect at play there. And that is to say, if we come back to, the largest part of history when humans have been alive, which is not the modern agricultural age, but for hundreds of thousands of years as humans, we were operating as hunter-gatherer. And so I'll genderize it really easily just for the sake of this, but of course, the hunter, the gatherer, the masculine, the feminine is in everyone. But if we use the term hunter and we equate that for ease of reference to the masculine, what was the hunter's role? It was to provide and protect, to provide food and sustenance, protect from dangers those who were under its protection. And so on some level, there's this need to be strong, and there's this need to be able to handle very challenging things, and that might be scrapes and the result of being out hunting and all this kind of stuff. And so I think in this need to go out and be strong and to brush things off and to get on with things, to provide and protect, to be a show of strength, which of course comes into, okay, well, therefore, the gatherer, what am I looking for in a partner at an instinctual level? Someone who is strong, someone who is a good hunter, who can get out there and get things done and look after us. Like I do think that there is, on some level, this kind of evolutionary basis to the masculine wanting to be strong and independent, and the feminine looking for that. Now, of course, that's in any individual, regardless of their gender and sexuality. And so that doesn't mean that we look at that and go, okay, cool, throw our hands in the air, too bad, this is my genes at play. It means if we can understand that on some level, you're still an animal. I'm an animal. And so I have instinctual drivers in there. And of course, if those things are still happening on some level, and you combine that with a really misguided kind of societal aspect to it now, then we can start to understand, it can actually be, there's a few things potentially in the way of me getting past this hump that I have about being potentially seen as weak and not capable. Now, of course, the way I look at that is, well, knowing that helps me to go, okay, cool. Well, those exist, but they don't need to be my existence.
I love that right there. They exist, but they do not need to be my existence. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so then I have choice. Okay. So if I'm going to ask for help, I'm going to reach out to Phil. I really dig his content, and I'm going to say, look, I am lonely. I don't know what to do. I'm terrified of doing that because maybe that means that I am a failure. Maybe it really means that I am lonely. Maybe that means that I'm a weak, useless individual. That's what I'm terrified of happening. Okay. Is that true? I know that there's these things at play that kind of add fuel to those beliefs. So if I remove those, maybe it's not as real as I make it out to be. And for me, this is where we can use our thinking. This is where masculine mode can be very beneficial, because we can actually think without rumination. We can break down and go, that's interesting. And then I can connect into the feeling. So the feeling I'm avoiding is being fucking terrified and being seen. And so I can start to separate some of the stuff that might have generated who I am in those beliefs. And if I can go, okay, well, I can park them to the side. Now, what do I want? I want to not feel lonely. I want to create connection. All of a sudden it feels like it's an easier step to take when I've got rid of all of those things to the side a little. So again, I hope that's making sense, and giving perhaps a little, deeper window into human, animal, and that those things don't have to be our existence. Because of course, if I allowed my animal instincts to rule my entire life, then I wouldn't be a conscious, evolved human being, but they're still in there on a level. So if we can recognize them, then we can choose to go, that's interesting. Okay, I get that, but it doesn't need to, as I said before, be how I live my entire existence.
Yeah, and I think that sort of going back, saying that the masculine and feminine aspects are in all of us, and some humans operate more in masculine, less in feminine, more in feminine, more less in masculine, and recognizing that there are times. Indeed, one of the reasons for the tattoo on my forearm there is, to recognize that there needs to be that balance. And, for every activity, there's rest. There's, for thinking, there's also feeling. And that balance is actually really critical. But I think, Mike, you've just you've cracked that wide open you've cracked that wide open in terms of having, like, being able to sit back within ourselves and go, you know, these are thoughts. I am not my thoughts. These are the stories. And getting thoughts are one thing, but the stories behind them, we often need help to uncover, despite desperately wanting to do it alone. And I want to say just on that, that if we decide to do it alone, it's little wonder that we feel lonely. Because if you do consciously or unconsciously subscribe to the belief that you are, to be a human, to be a man, to be a fully self-sufficient island, you miss the point entirely. And it's very little wonder that there is an absolute epidemic of loneliness, which the current pandemic has highlighted. It was there before it.
Yeah.
But when we subscribe to the belief, consciously, subconsciously, that we are meant to have our shit sorted, the consequence of that, almost inevitable consequence of that, is loneliness. Because you have missed so many opportunities for that real, authentic, genuine connection that comes with, I don't know how to do this. I need help.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things, because for me, you know, and when you use the analogy of the island, I think it's really powerful because it's fundamentally what we're doing a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it's such a twisted fucking place, because at the same time, there's often this, maybe for some people very conscious, for other people perhaps a little bit more simmering beneath the surface, this hope that someone will come and rescue me from the island, because that means I don't have to take the vulnerable and courageous step.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, that can't happen. Right.
Yeah.
No one's going to save you. And so for me, it brings in this aspect of, you know, when you're on the island, I'm just going to get myself all sorted and then I can cross the bridge. Nope, doesn't happen, because of course there's no perfect humans. And so you're not going to get to that point. But, you know, as humans, and this clearly comes right into, you know, the depth of intimacy and connection, is we, at our baseline, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be appreciated for who we really are. But when we've developed and then taken on board and embodied all of these beliefs and conditionings about, well, who you are isn't enough, and if you even just go and ask for help, that means you're weak and therefore not enough, we become terrified of being judged for who we are. And so we don't want to be seen, because the risk of judgment, rejection, et cetera, becomes too big. And so we, again, live on this island going, I want that depth of connection and being seen, but I'm not willing to do the scary thing to take me towards the shore of possibility for, you know, a different the mainland, let's say. And so there's this kind of naive thinking that maybe someone else will build that bridge for me and make it safe for me to cross. But of course, that can't happen. Someone can meet you there. There's a whole different topic really to go into, but someone can meet you there and invite you. But if they do the work for you, then that's what we would call codependency. Now, all of a sudden, you're enmeshed in that person because they've had to do all the bloody work for you. You're needing a savior. They have the savior complex. That's just not going to work long term. And so, island, mainland, risky waters, we've got to build the bridge of safety ourselves, which essentially can look as simple as, Mike, you are safe. If you ask for help, if you step into connection, if you make yourself vulnerable and say to Phil, your work really resonates with me, I'd really like to know more. How can you help me? Even if for some reason Phil turned into a complete dickhead and said, ha ha, look at you, you weird human, I don't like you, which of course, holy shit, that is never going to happen.
No.
Even if he said that, the bridge of safety, now that I seem to have really jumped on this analogy.
Yeah, I'm going to let you go with that. Yeah.
Says, I can handle that, because it doesn't mean it's true. Maybe I need to find someone else.
Yeah.
And maybe the next person says, okay, maybe there's some information I can take from that. Talk to people who know me well. Maybe there's someone else, because maybe those other two people have got some shit going on in their lives that made them act like that.
Yeah.
But that safety is something that we have to choose to create for ourselves, because that's that edge that we're talking about before. Whatever that feeling is, I don't feel safe, is often at the base of that. And, you know, again, if we come back to the very primal aspects of humans, safety and security and survival, very fundamental drivers. And I know you spoke about it in your blog. And so, listener, if you haven't read the blog yet, look at it. When we go into that threat,
It's going
survival,
to be a link in the episode description. Yeah.
that threat survival mode of fight or flight, this is what's happening. One, we have less access to resources, which might sound simply like we can't think as clearly, but we don't act as effectively either. And so when our safety is threatened, we don't act very effectively. Unless, of course, it is about getting the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But in the sense of asking someone for help, your safety isn't threatened. Yet we go into that mode when we try and avoid the tough feeling, and we just go, you know what, I'm okay.
And I guess, you know, when you just said something there that made me think, like me often ask for help when there is no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you said, you know, it's fight or flight. And so we keep fighting until we need to flighting. And when you know, and then we can move. But because we've exhausted every other fighting option, we then go to flight. And I think there are so many parallels that we can draw on that in our in our day-to-day experience. Like, we don't want to ask for help. You know, and there's a couple of things that I want to weave into here, Mike, because I know we need to wrap this up. But like, there are a couple of things that you know, I will not, me speaking really personally here, I will not ask for help unless every other avenue has been exhausted. And hi, I'm Phil. I am the loneliness guy. I am the lonely diplomat as well. I kind of know a few things about loneliness and authentic connection, and I know how important it is. And I know that, you know, it's a valuable opportunity. In asking for help is a valuable opportunity to build real, meaningful connections in life. But it's so fucking hard to do. Still, I have to go through this whole process all the bloody time to ask for help. And I'm not talking about, hi, you know, I kind of sort of think that I might be a little lonely. No, it's not that at all. It's like asking for directions. I will still get my phone out, look on Google Maps, look up Google. Like, if I don't know where a shop is, for instance, in a mall, if I don't know where it is, I will look it up myself on the website. Like, and I'm standing in the fucking mall. Sorry, I'm very, very passionate about this because I'm swearing, but yeah, and you know, rather than ask another shop, like, you know, someone who's working in a shop nearby or something like that, I'm a fully self-sufficient adult. I still do that, and it's not until, and it takes so much effort in me, so many, you know, of those stories to work through still.
Yeah, so much.
And I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, and look, I think that. So we're all, because I would say to the person who says, you know, I really struggle to ask for help. Well, I bet you in some areas of your life you don't at all. I bet you're fucking great at it. Easy.
Yeah.
It would be easy. So why do we struggle where we struggle? And you said a word before, which, you know, for me, it kind of hits the point, which is shame. And that is, the areas that we're going to struggle is the areas that we're vulnerable to shame. And so, because this all, again, comes back to the story, what am I making this mean about myself? Does this mean that I can't direct myself around a mall? What does that mean about myself? We keep asking those questions, and we might start to get to the real answer, you know. So for the same example of asking for directions and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, what? No, just ask for directions. It's a shortcut.
Yeah.
It's the simplest way to do it, because
Yeah.
I have there's nothing attached to that at a deeper level. Well, where else would I might, so for me, the question would be like anyone, so then where is it that I struggle to ask for help?
Yeah.
Interesting. What is it about that thing? You know, so for me, it might be more in my business. So then I need to go, oh, so what is it about that? What is it about perhaps my identity and how I identify? Is it that if maybe my business, if I don't know this about my business, does it mean that I'm not very effective? Does it mean that my business is a bit like, all of a sudden I can go into curiosity and see where the little spark, the little attachment is. So yeah, be careful not to get caught on that. It's just the directions, you know.
Yeah.
It's the what's the thing beneath it, and then perhaps keep going. What's the thing beneath it? What's the thing beneath it?
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people, you know, we've spoken about shame, we've spoken about worthiness, and so I think this is worth talking about because it's all linked, very much so. Because for a lot of people, I think the initial response to asking for help is, I don't want to impose, I don't want to be a
Yes.
burden.
Yes. 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 And that's me all over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so again,
emphatic agreeing.
then we get to ask the question. So then, well, what would it mean about me if I were a burden?
Yeah.
What would it, you know, what would people think about, what am I afraid people will think of me if I'm imposing on them or they feel imposed upon? So again, you see, come back to the first point, curiosity. We've got to get curious and digging beneath this stuff. And one thing I'll say to that really quickly, and that is this: you can't be a burden. Someone can choose to be burdened by you. And what I mean by that is, if I ask Phil for help and he really doesn't want to do it and he feels like I'm being a burden, then say no. And if he says no, I can't be a burden because I haven't burdened myself on him. Whereas if he can't take it on and he feels like, oh man, that's such a burden, then he's chosen that by not setting boundaries. And so, of course, there could be some important feedback and information for me on that. And doesn't mean I just go around shitting my energy over everyone else. But if someone doesn't want to do something, if I ask Phil for help and he can't do it, then he gets to say no. But if I'm stopping that question from even happening because I'm afraid of him thinking I'm a burden, then I never potentially get help. And he never potentially gets to execute a boundary or help me.
Yep. Yeah, right. That's so profound. That's so profound. And one thing that you say, Mike, all the time, and you've not yet said it in this, so I'm kind of prompting.
Go for it.
Yeah. And it's so true. It's so true. And it relates to the more asking for directions thing. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And you know, often we can, you know, find ourselves saying to ourselves and to each other when we do ask for help, it's just this, just do that. And the just is a very easy word to say, but it drips in judgment. Because, you know, that just, and I say this, I've said this in a couple of the coaching calls that I do, you know, for you, Mike, is, you know, that just for you giving the advice is just a tiny little step. But for someone else, that just is an enormous chasm that they have to leap over and are terrified of doing. So that you know, just asking for directions, like, you know, the you know, how, like the resistance and the reluctance that we can feel within ourselves to do that is, you know, and I sound like you, you know, playing out in so many different parts of our lives. But, you know, it's often that, you know, when we say, you know, you need, you know, more awareness, you know, pay attention to how you respond to every day, because we can sort of sail through life not paying attention to how we're triggered by positive or negative stimulus. But paying attention to that can start, you know, unraveling the jumper. Like, you know, you're pulling at a thread and it all starts revealing. I don't want to say unraveling, because that kind of connotes something negative and falling apart.
Yeah, exposing.
You pull the
perhaps.
thread and it reveals.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think, you know, for the listener, that's critical. Like paying attention to the literal things helps make the big things make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be windows into, you know, deeper things when we see some of those seemingly more insignificant and smaller things.
Yeah.
And if we dismiss those, for example, struggling to ask for directions or whatever it may be, then we are potentially missing big clues elsewhere. And at the same time, if we can work on those smaller, perhaps easier ones, because I think we can all agree objectively that asking for directions is a hell of a lot different to asking for someone's advice on the intimacies of your relationship, let's say.
Yeah.
So if we can practice those smaller ones, it becomes much easier down the line. And of course, if we can notice how we're showing up in those smaller examples, then we can probably get a bit of an insight into where that's happening elsewhere.
Yeah, right. Another thing that I wanted to explore there, Mike, is and listener, make no mistake, like this is there is so much content. There is so much content in all of this. So, you know, this is like many years worth of work, which I'm fully down to do. But a word that keeps on coming to mind, and you may have said this a couple of times, Mike, but you know, that vulnerability. The vulnerability of asking for help. And I find myself often quoting my intellectual crush here, Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability. We find vulnerability to be a strength in other people, but a weakness in ourselves. And appropriately putting yourself out there, asking for help, that power, like the vulnerability is like the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of the perception of not being enough, not being man enough, not being, you know, that fully self-sufficient island. I didn't want to bring that up because I think we need to leave that geological and geographic kind of thing alone. Okay, we've agreed to sail away from the island now. There we go. That was the last one. Yeah, something, you know, when we see it on like YouTube, when we hear it on a podcast, like the power, like, oh my God, it is so bloody inspiring. It's like, you just go, oh, like good for them. And, you know, being a serial empath as I am, like, you know, you kind of, you know, start to well up, you know, when someone's had a, you know, a triumph over adversity and, you know, taken the leap and stuff. But when it comes to ourselves, nope.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to and makes sense of a little bit of why we can find it so bloody amazing in others, is because our reference point is it's so terrifying. And so therefore, you know, because if it wasn't so terrifying to us, we might not even see it as so remarkable in someone else, because like, what's the big deal? But because we're so far behind the bloody fence, because that's where we sit ourselves, we see someone else do it and we go, as you just said, oh my God, good on them. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, because we build it up to be so big and we see someone else do it and it thinks they just climbed the bloody mountain.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And so hopefully we can see that and see it as evidence as to maybe why we could do it, because other people might admire it. And also that, maybe I'm making it so big because I make it so big.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But I think the other point that's so fundamentally crucial for us to understand when it comes to, you know, the idea of vulnerability, and we can potentially even exchange that word for things like openness, and also make sure coming along in its wake is courage, is that the things we want in life only come from that place. We don't have our greatest connection and intimacy from a place of strength and capability. They only come when we actually enter into our most intimate moments, and you know, essentially when we are coming into vulnerability. And, you know, anyone listening can sit for a moment and perhaps for 30 moments every day for a month and reflect so you can gather information and evidence. When have been my greatest moments, you know, the most connected, intimate, the most beautiful moments I've shared with other people, et cetera, et cetera. And what's been going on there? Was I at my strongest and most capable and bravest in terms of being that kind of old school, as you said, kind of misplaced stoic? Or was it because I actually stepped into and had a tough conversation and we truly were able to connect, et cetera? And I think you'll start to quite simply build evidence that, it only comes when I do that part.
Love it. I just held the silence there for a moment because I'm like, I wanted that to be the promo. And for editing purposes after, that was brilliant, Mike. Because, yeah, we often want to, and like your point goes to like the change as well. Like we don't change. We don't change when things are going well, when things are good. We change when, you know, we've got no choice. But when we are vulnerable, when we, you know, and for gay men or for anyone on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, you know, we recognize, and this is the topic of episode 9 with my conversation with Alexander Gerard on owning our coming out stories. We recognize the strength that it takes to come out and declare, I'm gay, and then to live life out. We recognize it, and that's why it is, you know, and for people who haven't had to do that, it's not, it turns it beyond, like, they could get the theory, but once, you know, the practice is there, and it never, for me anyway, like hearing someone else's coming out story never fails to move me, because it is such a powerful example, real life example of taking a step and not knowing where you'll land.
Yeah, and entering into a very vulnerable experience. And what's the historical, you know, look back on that was potentially one of your greatest moments in life, as terrifying as it might have been, the freedom and all those things, right? That can only come from being in that place, which, you know, might even equate to, I'm just spitballing in my head here, that the 50th time you share your coming out story, i.e. from a place of strength and capability, does not have the emotional response in terms of, oh my God, what a relief and the freedom. In that moment, you can certainly remember back to the initial one, but because it's from a place of strength and capability. Now, if you're having to say it to someone brand new in a totally different environment, some vulnerability. Then, you know, the other side of that, it mirrors it somewhat.
Yeah. And I think that's, I often say in my work, you know, we have proven, particularly, you know, in my work here at the Loneliness Guy, we have proven that we are capable of doing brave things. We are capable of amazing courage. And, you know, this, if we find ourselves sitting with the thoughts and feelings of loneliness and needing more real, authentic and genuine connection to ourselves, to those we love most, and to our communities, which, you know, you know, we're then capable of taking steps. And yep, it's as scary as all get out. But, and Mike, I just want to go back to that point that you made, and then you said it here in the 57th minute. I noted it, so it's easy to go back and edit and pick it out for the promo. But those important moments in life come from when we sort of, I want to say lean in, but when we are actually there, and we, you know, are fully present and connected and seeking that connection.
Yeah, we're only going to have our most connected, intimate moments when we are on the, you know, in that place of vulnerability, to be super broad with it. And that's just how it works. And like, here, by the way, this popped to my head before. So here's another example of that. But if you think about the idea of makeup sex,
Mm.
what's going on there? Right? It's like, it's a thing. You realize it's a thing. There's a bit more spark to it a lot of the time. Well, generally to make up, it required vulnerability. And then we connect in the inverse kind of amount. Like that's
Yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And so we only get to that point because whatever it is, someone's, chosen to admit fault, have a tough conversation, whatever it is, vulnerability there. And so guess what comes next? It's like a slingshot, boom, connection, intimacy, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah. Great point. Can I just press pause for a moment? Hold on. Okay, so Mike, what's with all of this? And like you, me, and the listener and the viewer on YouTube need to get on with our days. And the coffee's been drunk, and the coffee shop owner needs the table.
Yeah.
What? What's next? What's on and what's next for Mike Campbell and his quest for global domination?
Wow. I wouldn't quite call it global domination, but if we can create a new, it's not really the term, but for ease of reference, I'll say a new model of manhood, and men can comfortably live in authenticity and full self-expression, then I'll be a happy man. So what's happening right now is my own podcast that I've just launched recently, Everyday Legends.
It's really good. It's really good. Listen to it.
And so, yeah, look, that's, I suppose, as you very well know, a project that is taking some attention from me and I'm having some fun with, as well as, those little moments of frustration and all that kind of stuff. But opening myself up to enjoying the journey that will be and gets to be. And so the other side of that is a big revamp in my major coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy, which I'm very grateful and privileged to have Phil as part of, as one of our coaches. So that is kind of relaunching with our first intake coming up very soon, depending on when you're hearing this. And so, there's lots of little things in and around there, but those are kind of the two of the major projects at the moment in business, because then there's the other one, which is being a father, which is, got a few lessons in it.
Listener, I do need to say, Mike's daughter, Mike and Naz's daughter is just like tremendously cute. And so if you follow him on social media, you will see lots of dad's parenting going on there, and it's awesome. But I will share this, that if you towards the beginning of this year, we're talking, what's 2020 got involved, for us, and Mike was, on this day, I'll finish work, and then, child will be born, and this will happen, and this will happen, and this will happen, and I'm a parent, and I just, okay, good. It's good to have a plan. We'll see what the child has to say about all of that. So this is fantastic. But it's something that you can only learn by doing it yourself.
Mm-hmm. As I am learning, as I
am. So, Mike, I do need to say that, you did mention that I do some coaching work for you and run part of the run with you part of that coaching program, which is now turning into Everyday Legends Academy. And you do have a page on my site, on the Loneliness Guy, and where people can come get quick information, and then I can introduce you, or introduce them to you, and so they can get some information from you about what the program entails. And on that site, and listener and viewer, I do want to say this. I was in Mike's first program, and there's a whole story in there, and you know, that might be, you know, something for a later time in there, of like working through my own shit, you know, getting out of my own head. Mike calling me forward in his trademark way of seeing straight through me. And I was in the first intake that started in October 2016. And God, that seems like such a long time.
Well, I was just thinking it's almost October now, right? So
yeah,
coming up there.
Yeah, so you know, it's like a whole Olympiad between
True.
things. But it is. I continue, like, I have the privilege of sitting with men, gay men, straight men. At the end of the day, it's more than about our sexuality. And we realize that we are far from alone in having the thoughts and feelings, the thoughts in our mind, and weird, ill-defined feelings within ourselves about being enough, about the fear of not having all of our shit together, but and being exhausted by, I guess, like maintaining the illusion that we do have all our shit together.
Yes.
And we have the most amazing conversations, and there is the power of community in there.
And I'll actually circle back to one of the points earlier, you know, when I was speaking about what is one of the reasons that we struggle to ask for help in our biology. You know, there has been this kind of need for strength and independence, but let's not forget one of the fundamental parts of human evolution has been the community.
Yep.
And, you know, the masculine and feminine, or the masculine is hunting as part of a pack. And so actually, for me, it is so paramount that as men, we go together, because we are used to, in our genes, being in community, being bounced back, being seen, being challenged, being called forward, right? That's how we grow. And it's just so fundamental to who we are. Of course, the thing that often prevents us from doing that is the fear of being seen, of actually connecting. And as we spoke about throughout all of this, well, when we step into vulnerability, that's when the good stuff comes.
Yeah. I have to say, it's phenomenally powerful. And I remember being so terrified, shit scared of like the community. But that is the greatest attribute of the program is, you know, Mike's awesome. Don't get me wrong. I'm awesome. Full stop. But it is the power of community, having other men in your corner who are also going through the same, if not very, very, very similar. You getting that help and support from them is the hallmark for me of that program. And it is something that I do want to, like, I am replicating in my premium subscribers Facebook group, so which you can access, listener, for $9.95 Australian dollars a month, which is about $6.57 US a month, which is that power of community, and looking to, when you show up, when you are being vulnerable, you ask for help and you allow other lonely gay men to get help and to give you help, and you get to help others, that we forge that community. And it is that community which is a salvation community, which gives us that real, authentic connection that we need to start getting more of it in life.
Yeah. And look, when we say vulnerability, you know, that might imply that it's really, really hard. And it's only really, really hard in the first instance because we make it hard. It's actually really easy once you start, and there's all the reward, but it becomes very, very simple as long as you allow yourself to choose it. And then that's when all the benefits come.
Yeah. So beyond the page on my site, and there's going to be a link in the episode description directly to your page, Mike, on the lonelinessguy.com. How can we find you?
Well, you can find me online, mikecampbell.com.au, or you can find me on most of the socials, Mike Campbell MC. Mike Campbell MC. Instagram, that's where I hang out a bit these days. Feel free to send me a DM. Always happy to hear from people, questions, and all that kind of stuff. So, otherwise you'll find me here on the Gold Coast at the moment. Can't go very far, potentially with a coffee in my hand or maybe a baby in the other.
Yeah. It's, as I said, just follow Mike for the awesome parenting and photo like pictures of sickening sunrises and stuff over the ocean on the Gold Coast. But Mike Campbell, thank you so much. And so before I wrap up, listener, I just do want to say, and viewer, I do want to say that Mike is here. I am here to help, and we are committed in our own ways to help and support you in wanting to get more connection in your life. If you are a gay man, if you are a man who recognizes that you're experiencing the thoughts and feelings, the shit thoughts and feelings of loneliness, when you are ready, we're here. We're here to help, and it would be our honor, it would be our pleasure to help you take some more steps to get the real and authentic connection that you need in life. So please, we're here. There's links going to be everywhere in the episode description. You can't miss it. There's no wrong way of taking that step. But the step needs to be taken if things are to change.
Very much so.
Mike Campbell, you just I've lost count of how awesome I think you are, and the ways. Thank you so much for joining us and connecting over coffee with the Loneliness Guy.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute joy, and I hope that there's some benefit from this. And do the thing. Do the thing. Do the thing.
Yep. Just do the thing. Yep. You're right. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
All right. I'm just going to see you, viewer. Thanks so much for making it this far on YouTube. We'll see you next time.